You've done a lot of acting in different environments. You've done TV, you've done movies, you've done theatre. Was this your first time doing CG?
I did a bit of CG on Captain America,
Yeah.
and I believe I became a CG character in Star Wars. So, yeah, first time for any length of time, and this kind of new technology. But we had two extremes. So we did a lot of stuff where everything was built, like bag end was complete and incredibly detailed, and then the throne room at Erebor was a green box with a green chair and a piece of masking tape. So it was kind of the best of both worlds, really.
So what are the challenges of working in a CG environment where you're not necessarily interacting with an actual person or an actual environment?
The challenge is that, especially when you're interacting with, for example, another character that you have to have dialogue with, which we did a number of times, where Ian would be in a different room and I would be on the set listening to his voice on an earpiece. That was tricky. But then of course you just go back to the rehearsal and you re-engage with him, look into his eyes, then separate and go back and do what you were doing. That was challenging, but then on the other hand, sometimes when it came to fighting a CGI creature, you could create much more than you'd be able to achieve with a stunt guy. So you could be very inventive, and when we were fighting the spiders, which I can't talk about, when we were fighting the goblins, you could really imagine some moves and give the digital animators something to work with. So it was challenging and creative as well.
Did you find yourself missing sort of practical effects at all, or?
Well, as I say, we did have the best of both worlds. So we had literal fights with real people. We had real props, and the bits that we didn't have, we had it was mainly the environments that we wouldn't have. They would give us a great painting of the place that we were, and Peter would describe things to us. Occasionally we'd have a CGI weapon, which was a green stick, which is great because they pad the stick, so you could then really thrash the stunt guy with the weapon, and it looks like you're really hitting them. So yeah, there were benefits to both.
So you, when you're acting, do you tend to immerse yourself in the character and stay in a character?
Yeah.
When you're on set and off set?
Yeah, I mean, it was especially for this character, because he was in a quite a stressed state of mind throughout the story, and I wanted to find different levels of humility and honor and nobility for him. So kind of keeping his ideas in my head and keeping the journey in mind, keeping where he'd come from in mind, and he came into the story fairly burdened. It was I had a lot to think about, and of course it's a road movie, so he's always dealing with the immediacy of what's happening to him, but it's informed by what's gone before and what's coming next. So really I had to concentrate quite hard. So yeah, staying in character was pretty important.
So when you went home at the end of the day, or went back to your trailer or whatever, you stayed as Thorin, essentially?
Not at the end of the day. I did. Yeah, it's interesting when the stuff comes off, like when the prosthetic comes off and the hair comes off. Yeah, it's done. But you were always thinking about the character. So, and I'd occasionally have a dream about that was sort of along his thought lines. I don't know. But yeah, you don't go to lunch being Thorin.
I was wondering, what the limitations were, and how does Thorin Oakenshield pour his cereal? But
yeah, you don't kind of get it. It's like it's like marinating in a character. You're not being him, but he's never very far from your thoughts. And the physical thing, like because of the boots, because of the fat suit, when you walk off of set, you sort of have to keep walking like him because you've got all the gear on. So yeah, you just keep him in mind all the time.
So the fat suit, that was to change your body structure rather than make you round, I'm guessing?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you shrink somebody on film, they tend to look like children, and I think they needed us to look like bulky warriors, and the dwarves have a different kind of genesis to humans, so they're much thicker set, shorter legs, bulky upper body. I remember visualizing him like a bison, very kind of bulky upper strength. So they kind of make that shape for you with a suit, and then the costume sits on top of that. So that's why we don't really look like little people. We sort of look, you know,
like
big and
little
strong.
men. Yeah.
Yeah.
How did they shrink you? Is that fancy camera or CG or?
A little bit of both. Some extremely kind of high-tech trickery where, as I described before, where one set of people are on a scale set and some others are in a green room, and then they overlay both images at the same time. And then good old-fashioned standing on a box, or delivering lines from your knees. Luckily, I didn't actually have to do that very often. I think they were very kind to Thorin. They didn't have him on his knees talking to Gandalf very often.
That would be a bit weird.
That would be a bit weird, wouldn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
In many ways.
Yeah. So how much did you know about Tolkien going in?
I'd read this book when I was, I don't know, 12 years old. I'd done a stage play of it when I was about 15, so I was familiar with The Hobbit. Then I read Lord of the Rings one summer, and became a massive fan of the movies. But yeah, when I knew I was doing this, I went and started looking at other things like the Silmarillion and the Book of Lost Tales, just to get a, you know, I wanted the big picture. Because really, the Silmarillion was Tolkien writing his, you know, Genesis story for Middle Earth. You know, where all the elves came from, where the dwarves came from, and I just thought that was really interesting to look at those old, you know, rivalries that had happened between them, because we were going to play this story of the elves and the dwarves and the antagonism between them, and finding out where that came from was really interesting.
How do you feel that knowledge affected your performance?
Well, it's that thing of knowing but not showing. So, you know, you fill your mind with history of your character, so that it's not that you play it in every moment, but it just gives that character a sense of I don't know. It's like an encyclopedia, isn't it? You can just sense that they know who they are, who they've been, and who they want to become. I think that's important when you're crafting a character that is of age and experience like Thorin.
So Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit are obviously very well loved, very well known. They've got a massive fan base, both the books and the films.
Yeah.
How did you feel taking on such an iconic role, such a popular world?
You do feel a responsibility to, you know, give lovers of the book what they're looking for, to give lovers of those films what they're hoping for. So there's a responsibility there, and also to kind of try and imagine what Tolkien was hoping for when he wrote the story. But at the same time, I've got my version of that character in my head, which was there when I was 12, and it's there when I'm 40, and it's changed a little bit in those years. So you're just listening to all of those different things as you're putting a character together, and we've ended up with this guy on the wall.
So just going away from The Hobbit, I've heard that you're all about sustainable energy.
It's new to me. I'm sort of just interested in seeing if there's a way to live without all those things that we rely on. It's maybe something to do with this job.
Yeah.
I don't know. When I was playing Thorin, I tried to get the guys to come out camping to see if we could do one of those kind of nights out as the dwarves would have done, but not many people were up for it. I don't know. I just like the idea of not being too reliant on you know, fossil fuel and flicking our light switch, just to see what it's like.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not very reliable yet, but it's
just interesting to see how little you need, really.
Yeah. I imagine that when you're acting, there's a sense of camaraderie with your fellow actors. Did staying in character as Thorin affect that relationship with the other dwarves and the other actors?
I don't know, because I was staying in character.
Right.
So I mean, I think there was something about Thorin that was a little bit lonely in his, you know, whatever quest he was building in his head and whatever had been bequeathed to him in terms of the burden of carrying that. I felt that was something that he had to bear alone. But you know, we did a lot of work. We did a boot camp together with all the lads, and we sort of went out into the bushes and sort of behaved like a sort of SAS team. So we had a lot of, you know, time to bond. And on set as well, the whole endurance issue, like when we came to fight together, it was you know, it was very bonding. And I, you know, had a training buddy that I'd go weight training with, which was Jed Brophy, and Graham actually. We trained together. So all of those things were important, but you know, at the same time, Thorin was potentially going to be king under the mountain again. So again, that's a responsibility that he could only take alone. So it was a balance between those two things.
You mentioned the boots.
Yeah.
What are the boots? Why didn't they come off?
Because I actually found them quite comfortable. Because I mean, they were sort of boots that were built around boots to make our feet look huge. Because Tolkien really describes in quite good detail the sort of heavy ironclad boots of the dwarves, and I had Magnum boots, which I think are like a brand that the army use, so they're incredibly durable and comfortable, and then they build these big furry heavy boots around them, and they take quite a bit of time to get on and off, so it was just easier to leave them on. But yeah, I kind of like them. I think they'll be a big fashion accessory this year because they just look so cool.
Yeah. So not even to sleep, they just stayed on all the time?
No, when I left set, because I couldn't drive my car with them because they were just so big that I couldn't get my foot on the gas. So yeah, I took them off at the end of the day.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome, thank you.